All right. Hello, hello, hello. This thing is acting a little weird today, but okay, there it is. It's user error. It's good to see y'all today. We've got some stuff to talk about, and I got so much I want to say. I better get into it. But we're going to talk about like what's the parallels between people who are experiencing like self-harm behaviors, parallels between self-harm behaviors and self-hate. Is there a parallel between that? Is there any likeness with that? What do we need to know if we're working with someone who has uh, self-harm behaviors, or let's just say they have self-hate type of behaviors, or they don't seem to like themselves? What's the parallels with that in self-harm and vice versa? How do you work with a client like that? So I just want to dig into it, and we got a lot to talk about. I got a great example of an intervention and a technique that you can use if you're working with a client like that. And guess what? It doesn't even require for you to do any psychoanalysis or going into trauma and things like that, and it can bring about significant responses. So I want to get into that in just a second, man. I'm really excited about this one. I already know it's probably going to go over, but we'll work with it. But before we get to that, of course, I like to inform everybody about our social work supervisor training that will be coming up in just about a week or so, on September the 25th and the 26th. So if you are an Alabama social worker and you're looking for opportunities to become a social work supervisor, we want to invite you to that. We also have a if you're looking for ethics CEUs, we have an ethics CEU that we will be having on September the 19th at 5:30. So check us out if you're interested in that. But let's get to the subject at hand, because I'm all over the place and this is really good stuff. So I want to start off with, again, this is This Week in Supervision, where we're helping individuals who have come out of the training and are supervision providers to understand different tactics to kind of engage their group, and also other professionals who are just trying to hear some things about technique or just want to learn some skills in the area of psychotherapy. I dumbed this down. My average session, we're talking about a lot. Matter of fact, with this last session I just had today, we were talking about situations when you're on the job and it's necessary for you to know about policy, company policy, and ethics, and making sure you document to cover your back, and how these things, trying to maintain this, can collide in a inappropriate way sometimes with people who have another agenda on the job, that their agenda, they may not have a license to protect and things. But anyway, but I'm dumbing it down. And so what we want to talk about, and look, y'all gonna like this, right? So there's a video, and I'm not going to be able to show you all the whole video, but the video, the individual in this video has some major anger issues, right? And the thing is that when we start to see people with major anger issues to the point that they're kind of acting out on themselves or things or people, there's some things that we need to be aware of. I don't want to get too much into it because time is moving. So I'm going to go on and share my screen. And I want you to be thinking that if you are the clinician, what comes to your mind as far as the concerns that you're seeing here. I want you to be thinking about how you might be treating them, how you might be creating a treatment plan, things of that nature. With this client, this would be a tough one, but if you know these skills, maybe not so. All right, so let me go on and share the screen, and we're gonna get with it. Hopefully it does what I need it to do.
One of the hallmarks of my existence has always been, just an insane amount of anger and rage. It's been there as long as I've known. So I don't have a conscious memory of not having rage, right? So earliest memories of life, when I'm 5 years old, I have rage like you can't believe. And it's a problem all my life. So as a teenager, if I go more than 2 weeks without punching a hole in the wall of our house, it's a miracle. I mean, I am so good at drywall. You can't believe how good I am. for all the stuff I have to repair around our house. Like I'm breaking windows, it just doesn't, like and so in a way, and of course I rationalized how much boxing saved my life because I had this amazing outlet for my rage, right? I got to basically exercise 6 hours a day. I'm hitting punching bags in people all day long. And it's just a beautiful outlet that keeps me out of jail. And a big part of that rage was inward, right? So
I'm gonna stop right there, right? So much to process, right? So this is your client, right? Let's just say that this is your client, and he is already describing to you, he's describing to us what I would take as self-harming behaviors, because if you're punching a wall, or it's bordering that. If you're punching a wall, you're taking out aggression on things, on people. Like if you have your group, I would want to structure a question around what according to Freud, which term, which idea did he just describe when he talked about making something bad, as in wanting to hit walls and hit people, and turning that into something that's socially accepted, like boxing and things like that. What term would describe that? And of course, the answer to that would be sublimation. When you're taking something that you're using areas to reduce the anxiety in your life in unhealthy ways. You're taking unhealthy impulses and changing it over into something that's healthy. Let me just play a little bit before we start processing it. Like, what are you thinking of this guy? I know when I heard this part right up to this point, I'm already thinking some things about what he thinks about himself. Okay. And I don't want to process it too much, but we're not going to have a lot of time anyway. But to me, when I see someone who's acting out in rage like this, I'm automatically wanting to understand if there's self-harming behaviors going on. If I find out that you're punching through walls, it's going to be, in my mind, a high probability that you have some other forms of self-harming behaviors, because some of these individuals that's doing things like this, they're actually breaking their fists, they're hurting themselves. And guess what? It makes them feel good. They're like, oh man, you could break your wrist and then you're getting an adrenaline rush, because it's a false form, an inappropriate form of grounding a lot of times, because of what is going on through the body. They have to feel pain to make themselves feel alive. I want to know if they're cutting as well. I don't want to go too deep into it, but I'm thinking about, like, if this is what you're doing, are you doing other self-harming behaviors? And are you having issues with yourself? It seems like, let me just play.
It's not rocket science to understand that a person who has that much hatred for everyone has an enormous amount for themselves. And so one of the things I didn't realize was happening was what my inner monologue was, because as you can appreciate, your inner monologue is so frequent and ubiquitous and present that it's easy to almost forget that it's there. I mean, that's the sort of dangerous part about it, right? Is kind of the David Foster Wallace, this is water thing. The fish are swimming through water. The water's everywhere. They don't even realize they're in water. You don't realize the subconscious stream of thoughts that constantly.
Okay, so we're going to, and I hope I have my thing set up. I know I'm gonna go wrong here because I thought I had the number. We're gonna skip to the intervention in just a minute. But he pointed out something I think is very serious, because this is a real life situation that this man is experiencing in his life. And he's saying that basically there is a parallel also with, if you're showing hatred towards others, in you possibly hating yourself. And that was the case with him. So here it is that we see. So if signs that someone might have a hatred towards themselves, many times may be that they're showing hatred towards others. You have prejudices towards people. People make you angry. You can't stand people the way they look, or if they're short, or if they're fat, or if they're white or black or whatever. You have issues with people. Okay. And you're acting out on that. Okay. So that's a sign. But then also you're engaging in harm, punching in walls. It's grounding you towards yourself. So there is, it's a good chance when you as a therapist got to be thinking, I wonder if this person has also hatred towards themselves. Because many times these are signs and symptoms of that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to stop this real quick and we're going to come back. How many of you all are familiar with parasuicidal behaviors? What is a parasuicidal behavior? Anybody familiar with that? And I'm going to try to see if I could bring up some information on that. Also, how familiar are you with symptoms of self-hate? Okay, because that's what we're talking about. There's a thin line between the two, right? So when we're talking about symptoms of self-hate, if you're trying to rule out that this person may possibly have that because of what's going on, what do these symptoms look like? Is he doing this? Is he doing this? So that's what you're going to be asking yourself about your client. Are they doing this? Oh man, we're at 10 minutes already. So here are some things that you might look at, right? Are they having negative self-talk? This is a sign of self-hate. Are they, this is a big one. I'm automatically thinking for somebody like that they have low self-esteem. That's something that you want to rule out. People who have hatred towards themselves, that's a sign of issues with self-esteem. And that's what you're processing in therapy. Oh, this is a good one. We've been talking about this and it's intentional. Because we talked about 88, we talked about OCD and OCPD and perfectionism. And now we're talking about anger because believe it or not, some of y'all that's onto it, y'all know that these all line up, right? Perfectionism is another one. Sometimes perfectionism is a sign of self-hate, self-isolation, self-blame, depression, anxiety. You know what they say about depression? And because a lot of these people who are like this, they have anger issues because you're raging out, you're punching walls, you're wanting to pummel somebody's face. So you got anger issues, right? And you know what they say about depression? And this is why we find out it's in the family, because they say depression is anger turned inward. Anger turned inward. So a lot of times that's where the self-hate comes because they're actually experiencing depression as a result of low self-esteem, things of that nature. All right, parasuicidal behavior. Somebody's punching a wall. I'm going to want to know if you have also had some symptoms of parasuicidal behaviors. And what are symptoms of parasuicidal behavior? My notes just left me. Symptoms of parasuicidal behaviors. Banging your head up against a wall may be a symptom of parasuicidal behaviors. What else is some other symptoms of self-harm behaviors, superficial injuries, impulsivity, difficulty expressing pain, superficial. These are not the ones that I was looking for, but so these are things that we want to rule out when we're trying to assess and treat someone with the behaviors that was just described by this gentleman here. So we want to get into the intervention because this is going to be a long video. We want to get into the intervention. What did he do to try to resolve this? We're seeing that everything, with anger, self-hate, aggression, all these things are in the family of someone who may need some treatment. I'm sorry, y'all. I lost my clips. But what do we do to treat? And we're gonna find out in a minute as soon as I find my video that I just lost. See, that's the problem, having all these screens up here, and I try to delete them out. But we're gonna get to what he did. Okay, let me just pull up YouTube again. What did he do to resolve this problem? And I think that a lot of us can use this when we're providing interventions to our clients. Okay, so let's here we go.
But I thought, wow, that.
All right, so this is some of what he did.
I'm 47 years old. This is the only way I've ever interacted with myself. How in the world could this be undone? It would take another 40 years to undo this. And they're like, no, here's this exercise you're going to do. So the exercise was every single time I did something where I would have that self-talk, I would have to immediately stop myself and pretend that it wasn't me that just did that, but it was one of my closest friends. And instead, I would audibly speak to that person. There was nobody else there, but speak to that person as though they are the one that made the mistake. And I was to record that on my phone. So if I'm out there shooting my bow and arrow and I don't get a bullseye, instead of screaming at myself, I have to say, oh, imagine it's my buddy JR who just missed that shot. What would I say to him? Pick up the phone or pull out the phone and say, of course, something different. And of course, what I would say in that situation was much kinder. I mean, infinitely kinder. It's like if I'm saying it to my closest friend, I'm going to say it in a very kind way. And I had to take a copy of that audio and text it to my therapist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Talk about
So can you imagine?
I was all on board this practice until you mentioned that, at which point, and I trust my therapist to a very deep level, but I thought, wow, that's a mountain.
Well, this poor person got a lot of text messages, a lot of audio files. But here's the part that just blows my mind. It only took, I don't know, I can't remember exactly. I'd have to go back to look at my journals. It only took about 4 months to get rid of Bobby Knight. Like, again, we had kind of a mental model for what this looked like, which was Bobby Knight was the chairman of the board. He sat in the boardroom and nobody else got to talk.
And for those that don't know, Bobby Knight had a terrible temper.
Yeah.
Yeah. The worst.
Right. This is the guy that was throwing chairs across the basketball court.
Level 11.
Yep.
Out of 10.
And all of a sudden, like, we got to the point where Bobby Knight is not even in the boardroom anymore. In fact, as I say this today, like, I don't really remember what he sounded like.
Man, we're gonna stop it there. My timer's telling me that we're pretty deep in here on the minutes. But this guy is saying that the voices of self-hatred faded just from this intervention. And this is astounding because generally a lot of times it's hard to get a person to this point without going more deeper into their emotions. So what I suggest for you all, this is a great intervention, especially with men, because a lot of times we want tactical things. We want activities. We don't want to just sit up and talk about, oh, well, I was abused and then, and this really hurt me and whatever, even though we need to. And so sometimes you're needing to get there quick. You need, and this wasn't a quick intervention, but sometimes some guys are not up to talking about the emotions and things. And if you notice in this intervention, there was little that he had to, really none, to talk about his emotional side or emotional things that he was experiencing. He was simply tasked to talk to himself in a different way as if it was someone else. So he didn't have to process any emotion. It seemed pretty simple, right? And so this is a technique that you might want to use. I'm telling y'all, get y'all game to maybe for men, for some women too. But a technique to where, you don't have to go the psychoanalytic route and you can still get the same results. Will this stop the tormenting thoughts about your identity and who you are? No. And that's the thing where I like to go psychoanalytic, but it does put some pause on it to get you to offer yourself what we call compassion. And it's almost like a compassion therapy where we're teaching the individual to have compassion about themselves. But the problem is that for some people, going directly to try to have the person to have compassion for themselves, that does not work because of the level of self-hate. And so we have to bring in a third party. And when you're seeing things from that way, where I'm not having to have compassion on myself, is which I'm really doing, but compassion like, hey, if this was my friend doing it, how would I talk to them? Then there's a different outcome. All right. We better stop. Y'all take care. Come out to the trainings. We got it on the 19th to see you. We got the supervisor training on the 25th. Y'all take care and have a blessed weekend.